So a few words before our Torah service. So these high holy days, as I alluded to last night, we'll be telling our own life stories and seeking our own teshuvah through the life of Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, today the Torah portion chanted will be Exodus chapter 2, the story of the birth of Moses. And by we, I mean Steve Steiner, who's our newest addition to the Hebrew school and our local Torah chanter. We recruit quickly here, Shir, Shalom. And on Yom Kippur, Stephen will be chanting Deuteronomy chapter 34, the death of Moses. So we're going to use those two Torah portions as the bookends so that we can talk about Moses and ourselves. So pictured here along the walls, as you see, we have what we consider to be the 10 most memorable moments in the life of Moses. Starting way back there, we have the birth of Moses, and then the turning point in which he sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating Israelite slaves, and then his flight into the wilderness alone and afraid, and of course the burning bush over here when he encounters God for the first time, his return to Egypt, now charged with the responsibility to tell Pharaoh, Shacher et ami, let my people go. And of course the plagues over here. And I've chosen this picture right here to discuss the moment before the crossing of the Red Sea. Arguably the most well-known, famous, maybe because of the Cecil B. DeMille, but this was also my Torah portion for my bar mitzvah. In the following verses, we find the verses that I'm about to share, we find the Israelites seemingly trapped from behind the Pharaoh and his army and the body of water in front of them. So Exodus chapter 14, verse 10. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were frightened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you've brought us out here to die in the desert? What is this that you've done to take us out of Egypt? Isn't this the very thing which we spoke to you about in Egypt, saying, 'Leave us alone, and we will serve the Egyptians, because we would rather live among the Egyptians than die out here in the desert?'" So I'm going to pause for a minute, and let's look at that dialogue and ask ourselves, how would we react to this deep-cutting sarcasm, this incomprehensible ingratitude, to this sniveling, "I told you so" rudeness of people forgetting everything that we'd done for them, all the miracles and wonders? I think many of us might initially want to react with you know what? Go crawl back to Egypt. If I haven't done enough for you to gain your trust, turn around. That could be, let me be rid of you. And if you agree in any small way with my how might we react scenario, then you're in the right place at the right time, right here this morning. Part of the purpose of the High Holy Days is to clear away the obstacles which block our way to teshuvah, this path towards a better version of ourselves. And what we're clearing away from this story is ego, the need to dominate or receive recognition as a winner in a confrontation. With teshuvah, we learn to surrender and defer our personal emotional desires and impulses to the greater good, to contribute positive growth and devoted unity. In fact, the only thing we should try to be in control of is the way that we respond to the world around us. So how did Moses react? He didn't. He responded. To react is when words and our actions are put in front of us that may be directed to us or maybe to others, and we take action, or we react with words, usually with an attempt to one-up the imposing party. I think we're all guilty of reacting to the world around us with a sense of false pride. To respond is to not get emotionally involved with the words or actions in front of us, but rather assess the entire situation without passion. So back to Moses and the confrontation with the Israelites. Let me repeat the first verse which I stated, chapter 14, verse 10. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing on them. They were very frightened. So Moses did not react to the sarcasm, to their ungratefulness, because he understood that they were crying out from a place of fear. Instead, Moses encouraged them, saying, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation, and that he will present before you today. The Lord will fight for you." Moses responded with compassion and with love. This response obviously changed everything. In fact, the next time the Israelites speak is in song with Moses, after witnessing the parting of the waters and then crossing the Red Sea, when they chant, "Mi chamocha Elohim b'Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele." Who is like you, Adonai, powerful in this holy place? So those few seconds between the Israelites crying out in fear and Moses responding not to the words, but to the essence of the whole moment, is what Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, of blessed memory, calls to embrace the space. Between stimulus and response, he teaches, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I would add that in that space rests our teshuvah, when we can see deeper, sense more profoundly what is really happening in front of us, without pride, without ego, without the painful obsession of self, and respond with love. Our constant thought of others and how we may help to meet their needs clears the path towards teshuvah, the best version of ourselves. 2 days ago, on Thursday, at 3 p.m. to be exact, 4 of us here, Ari Moshe, Reb Neal, sitting next to him, Tony Rollins, and myself, we got together and we hosted a talk show on KSVY radio, our Sonoma's local radio show. And we spoke for an hour about the High Holy Days, its themes, concepts, messages, and songs, and prayers, and meditations for the Sonoma community. And I didn't tell you guys yet, but I was awestruck and humbled when listening to the teachings of my friends, co-teachers in our Hebrew school, and the core of our worship committee. I cannot express enough the good fortune I felt this group of friends and colleagues in our community. This caused me to think about another essential component of teshuvah, and that of gratitude. As my mom used to say, one cannot be hateful if they are grateful. At Hebrew school this last Wednesday, I actually welled up in tears a little bit. I didn't want to share this last night when the Hebrew school kids were here because I didn't want to embarrass anyone. But last Wednesday, one of our students pulled me aside and said in Hebrew, "Ani ohev otcha," I love you. Don't do it. Don't do the Oz, because I'll hurt it. And then he opened up his arm and invited me in for a hug. And I thought, wow, Dayenu, that's it. Who could ask for more? And I thought about my teshuvah. Yesterday morning, I visited a retirement assisted living home to give a talk about Rosh Hashanah, to blow the shofar for the residents. A resident there requested that I come a half hour early before my talk, if I could come to his room. And when I arrived, he began crying. His wife, the love of his life for most of his life, was in the other room. She's dying, he said. She has both Parkinson's disease and dementia. Such a brutal death, he said. My heart is breaking, Rabbi, and I don't want to live without her. I did my best to give words of encouragement. With Moses as my teacher, I did not react to a crying man. I responded to a tearful husband in fear of losing his lifelong companion, his beshert, his soulmate. Once again, I was blessed with a warm, loving hug, which I think meant more to him than any words I may have offered. And one need not be a rabbi to have such encounters. I'd like to close with the words of wisdom from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel of blessed memory, words that help refine our goals during these high holy days, sentiments of sorts for the Jewish people. Heschel opened an essay he titled A Time for Renewal with a question: who is a Jew? He offers several answers, each suggesting how to change inside. But I'd like to offer just one of his answers. Who is a Jew? A person today of whom the Jewish martyrs and victims of all ages would not be ashamed of. A person who is willing to wrestle with God so that their suffering under grace may be molded into renewed purpose, a forgiving spirit, and a loving direction towards Teshuvah. Shana Tova.